Hello, everyone. I just take a minute to welcome Prime Minister Carney and all of the premiers to Saskatchewan for the First Ministers meeting in 40 years, first since 1985 in our province, and we're very fortunate to have that offer from the Prime Minister, and very fortunate to host all of the premiers here yet again. I would say that I look forward to today's meetings on behalf of not only the residents in Saskatchewan, but on behalf of Canadians. We've been very clear in our support in this province of doing our part to ensure that Canada does achieve the aspirational target that the Prime Minister has put forward of becoming the strongest economy in the G7, and very much support the Prime Minister's target of ensuring that Canada can become an global energy superpower. And that means all forms of energy do need to not only have a regulatory environment where they can be produced, but all forms of energy then also would have access to the world. And I think you'll see premiers working collaboratively on achieving just that. We've been very clear as well, we need to see some regulatory shift in order for that to happen over the long term. In the short term, we look forward to prioritizing a number of projects from coast to coast to coast to ensure that we can start that work as Canadians to become that global energy superpower and to increase the opportunities that we have economically to ensure that we are strong and stable and independent nation for decades into the future. In the longer term, that regulatory environment will have to change. I think that's evident by the fact that we are looking as Canadians to enact legislation that would actually circumvent the current environment that we have, and we most certainly look forward to that work as well. A point of collaboration that I would just point out where premiers are already working together on creating that access to Asian and European markets was the support by all, not only Western premiers, but Arctic premiers in creating a port-to-port corridor between the Churchill area or the Hudson Bay area and the Northwest ports on the Pacific coast. And that would be absolutely imperative and an opportunity, I think, for not only those in Western Canada, but for all Canadians to access those Asian and European markets. And that I would provide as an example of how premiers are already starting this work in doing our level best to ensure that we are contributing as 13 subnational governments, 13 subnational economies, contributing to those goals that the Prime Minister has of Canada becoming the strongest economy in the G7 nations and Canada becoming a global energy superpower. So thank you.
Do you expect the federal government to come forward with funding and money for whichever projects they choose to
Well, I think there's two conversations to have. One is around the regulatory environment that is there for private investment to happen. For example, we have 3 uranium mines in Saskatchewan that are working their way through the regulatory process. One of them actually has all provincial approvals and has for 2 years, and it's just recently received all of the federal approvals as well. And so we'd like to see that project move forward as early as this spring to start with their likely in excess of $1 billion of construction, thereby enhancing the economy in the very, very immediate term and ensuring a strong economy for years into the future by providing that low carbon energy source for other Canadians and for other markets around the world. So the first piece is the regulatory piece to attract that private investment. The second piece is often less about regulation, but sometimes regulation is involved, but is in public infrastructure. And I think that is almost a separate conversation with respect to how we are going to join as a provincial government with the federal government and oftentimes municipalities on publicly funded infrastructure that is going to provide the services that, at the end of the day, Canadians expect their governments to work together on. So there's two conversations there.
But that's a yes, right? For some of these nation-building projects that the federal government's going to choose today, you're going to expect or need federal money and funding support for that.
Yeah, our focus is actually on the private investment that we can attract. If we are truly going to achieve the target of being a global energy superpower and increase our economy to a level where it's the strongest in the G7 nations, that's going to take private investment. We aren't going to do that with public investment only. However, there will be public investment that is necessary in order to support Canadians and support our communities that we live in and support, yes, the private investment that is arriving. And so 2 separate conversations. The first has to be fast-tracking a number of projects, as well as having a longer look at how do we correct the regulatory process that we have to provide certainty for investment in all of the industries that are creating wealth and jobs for not only Saskatchewan people, but for Canadians across the country.
Premier, there's a collision here between the industrial agenda and a climate agenda as well, right? A lot of Canadians voted for the environmental and emissions policies of the Liberal government, and you and Premier Smith and others have suggested a lot of these things need to be scrapped to allow for the industrial agenda to move ahead. So how do you reconcile those things while we're here in a province under a state of emergency because of wildfires, which climate change now played a role in?
With an understanding that by developing Canadian products, and I will speak to Saskatchewan products, but by developing Canadian products, we actually are doing right not only by our Canadian economy and by Canadians in creating jobs in our communities, but we certainly are doing right by the environment as well, in particular when it comes to from a climate change perspective. In Saskatchewan, whether it be agri-food products, whether it be the oil and gas we produce or the potash we produce or the uranium, they're the cleanest products that you can find on Earth. Our ag products are some 65% lower in their carbon emissions on a net per ton basis than the next 7 largest producers around the world. When you get the pulses, it's much larger than that. Our potash produced in this province has half the carbon content on a per ton basis than the next largest producers, which are Russia and Belarus. And I would say there's maybe some ethical concerns with purchasing products from those countries as well. We all know what uranium is used for, as it is refined in Ontario and provided to Canadians and all other markets around the world as well. And when it comes to oil and gas, I said this yesterday, out on the western side in the heavy oil play between North Battleford and Lloydminster, companies like Cenovus and Strathcona are literally making billions of dollars in investments, not just in production gains, but in environmental gains in carbon, lowering the carbon content per barrel of oil they're producing. The methane emissions in that particular oil field have reduced since 2015 some 65%. I would ask anyone here today to name me another global industry that has lowered their methane emissions some 65% since 2015. It's really an incredible record. Down in the southern oil field that we have in Saskatchewan, we have net zero oil companies that are operating there using carbon capture and enhanced oil recovery. Really a strong environmental story on Canadian produced products, and I would say that we would be doing right, and not only by Canadians and our Canadian economy, but doing right by the global challenge that we all face in global climate change by producing and allowing the world to access more of those sustainable products that are produced right here in Saskatchewan, but there's equal products right across Canada that I say would deserve the same respect.
Can you talk a little bit about the change in tone in these meetings, whether or not you've met with Prime Minister Trudeau, you're now meeting with Prime Minister Carney? What is the difference in tone, and are you more hopeful this time in terms of Western alienation that your concerns are being met?
Yes, I am, and the words that I'm hearing from the Prime Minister I think are encouraging, and I would say I would hope are encouraging for all Canadians. When I hear the Prime Minister talk about becoming the strongest economy in the G7 nation, when I hear Prime Minister Carney talk about doing what he can to ensure that Canada becomes a global energy superpower, that is going to take some change. Policies do matter, and I think that's proved out in Saskatchewan over the last decade or decade and a half with the mining investments that we've been able to attract. But policies do matter, and so we are going to need a shift in policies in order for that to happen. And so I think all Canadians and myself are very encouraged by what Prime Minister Carney has said. We will now have to do some work, and we're willing to work alongside the federal government in ensuring that work happens to follow those words with action. And that's what needs to happen now. Thank you.